Good afternoon, everyone. Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, and Acting Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Telesford. Ms. Denise Roberts, Principal of the Grenville Secondary School. Mr. Philbert Lewis, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the N.I.S. Mr. Dorset Cromwell, Director of the N.I.S. Mrs. Cindy Ann St. Bernard, Deputy Director of the N.I.S. Management and staff of the N.I.S., specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Gordon, Finance Manager at the N.I.S., and I would like to welcome you to one in an ongoing series of stakeholder consultations to discuss the recommended changes to our Social Security program based on the 13th actual review. Today's agenda, we would have an opening prayer, welcome remarks from the HR Manager, Ms. Asher James, some remarks from the Acting Prime Minister, and 2 presentations on the topics mentioned above. I'd now like to invite Ms. Colleen St. Bernard to do an opening prayer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let us all stand in reverence to God. Father, I come to you in the name of Jesus as we begin this afternoon's consultation. Lord, I ask for your divine guidance of our undertaking here this afternoon. I seek your coverage, O God, of the presenters and the other delegates. I pray for your wisdom, clarity, and understanding of the proceedings, that it will be well received, Almighty God. I thank you, Father, for the persons gathered here, O Lord, that they are able to be present. And Lord, it is my prayer that we will leave more knowledgeable and understanding the purpose and importance of this consultation. Guide us, O God. Keep us. In your Son's precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
I would now like to invite Ms. Asher James, our HR Manager, to deliver some welcome remarks.
Afternoon, everyone. Honorable Philip Telesford, Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, and Acting Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Ms. Denise Roberts, Principal of the Grenville Secondary School. Mr. Philbert Lewis, Chairman of the N.I.S. Board of Directors, Mr. Dorset Cromwell, Director of the N.I.S., Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard, Deputy Director, invited guests, management and staff of the N.I.S. Good evening, everyone. My name is Asher James, and I am pleased to be standing here with my team, welcoming you who are present and those viewing virtually. A warm welcome to each and every one of you. The National Insurance Board, your social security organization, has proudly served you for many years. In fact, this year we celebrated 40 years of existence, a journey that we are extremely proud of, one in which we have consistently been able to provide financial support to our contributors in times of need. This could not have been accomplished without prudent, innovative, and sound management of the fund. It is on the back of this undoubted experience and stellar history that we are here this evening, confidently discussing the proposed changes which will ensure the continued existence of the board, allowing us the ability to serve you and the future generations for years to come. Today, we are very excited to be engaging with you, our valuable stakeholders, in discussions surrounding the results of the actuarial reviews, the new unemployment benefits, and the revamp of the self-employed regulations. It is our hope that through fruitful discourse, you will have a clear understanding of these parametric reforms and therefore the need for the upcoming changes. Welcome once again, and we look forward to your engaging, and active participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James. Just some housekeeping matters. Can everyone please put their cell phone on silent? And also, the two presentations that we have, we'd like to leave all questions to the end of both presentations. I would now like to invite the Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, and also Acting Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Telford, to make some short remarks.
Chairman of the Board of Directors of the N.I.S., Director of the N.I.S., Deputy Director, managers of the N.I.S., media, good afternoon. Well, and members of the audience, good afternoon to you all. Indeed, it is a pleasure for me to be able to stand with the N.I.S. this afternoon as you continue the discussion towards those changes that are so necessary to secure the longevity of the fund. These days for us, we live and breathe the N.I.S. change because we have to defend these changes almost everywhere we go. So first and foremost, I have to defend these changes in cabinet amongst my cabinet colleagues. And if we're not really entrenched with the significance of these changes, it would be difficult to sell and defend the reason for these changes. So we have no choice but to really embrace these changes and to really take it to the Grenadian public. These changes, I believe, for the last 40 or so years, would be the most significant things that are happening or that would happen to the N.I.S. in the last 40 or so years. These changes are far-reaching and deeply consequential and are absolutely necessary for the longevity of the N.I.S. And so as a government, we stand firmly with the board of directors and with management and staff to ensure that we protect the scheme. Now, social security is something that is absolutely necessary in any developing country. Because if we fail to make these provisions, it simply means that sooner or later we would have a mass of people who are deemed indigent and needing support from government coffers. That is why it is so important to protect the scheme. What is the N.I.S.? The N.I.S. is really a partnership between employee and employer, contributing in an independent fund that is managed by a body of stakeholders. That is what N.I.S. is. So you have employer representation, employee representation, government representation, and so on. And because of the mix of the board and the interested parties all having a common desire to serve and to protect the fund, you have a strong managed fund, strongly managed fund. But I want to say to us this phrase that I've coined recently. It reads something like this: we could have a hard-working and efficient staff, great operating systems and practices, a brilliant management, and a first-class board of directors with an eye for detail. But if government fails to make the legislative changes, the N.I.S. will simply come crumbling down in a few short years. This statement, I believe, underscores exactly why we're here. Government must make the change. And government in this context is not 9 people who are elected. Government in this context refers to opposition and the preposition of the parliamentary democracy system. Both opposition and government must come together, and I dare say the union too, because they are, and all stakeholders must come together and agree that these changes are absolutely timely and absolutely necessary in this current dispensation. If we agree, and for once in the history of Grenada, put the politics aside and seek country first, I am certain that we will walk out of Parliament with the very best results for the N.I.S. and for the country. By this, I am not in any way saying that we should stifle debate. Debate is absolutely necessary and important. The debating of the various sides and pointing out the pros and cons, all should be done in the best interests of the N.I.S. and not to promote our own selfish agenda. As a matter of fact, this, if you look at this objectively, you'd recognize that it is not in the best interest of the government of the day to promote these changes, because there could be political consequences because of the additional costs on the individual. Yeah? But in the long term, it is definitely the best option. So putting the politics aside, focusing on national development, I believe this indeed is the very best option for the N.I.S. at this time. We have paid for years, since 2002, we pay in the actuary. Every 3 or so years, I think it is. Yeah? Paying the actuary. And they are writing to you every single time, a big report. And every time, we put aside the report and we continue business as normal, except for the few instances when we picked the very menial changes, very inconsequential changes, and implemented. And that is why we're here, kicking the can further and further down the road. I do not intend to make a speech, but I just want to underscore the importance of this thing. It is critical. It is critical. I intend to follow with you this week and next week, just to offer my support, because I think I understand the mathematical consequences behind this. So I want to follow with you and to support the N.I.S. in this very important initiative. I want to encourage every Grenadian, come out, participate, ask the questions now. And strangely enough, the questions that you ask might just be the fitting moment to send us back to the drawing board to make small adjustments to this. I'm hoping that there is because after all of these rigorous and fine-tuning of the legislation, hoping that there might be no additional changes to be made. But I'm just simply saying to you, the questions that you may ask, the bright ideas that you may come up with, could mean a big difference for us as a government, as a scheme, and altogether for the beneficiaries. So I just want to encourage us to participate, ask the questions. There are no foolish questions. All questions are important. Ask the questions, yeah? Questions that they may not present a certain thing here, but you might just have a question about the N.I.S. Ask it. And let us all participate and make these sessions very exciting and interesting as we move around Grenada to finalize this leg of this campaign. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Philip Tesford, for your remarks. I will now invite Lisa Douglas, who will be making a presentation on parametric reform and the 13th Actuarial Review, which will support many of the points the Honorable Member made just a while ago. Mr. Douglas.
Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. And we thank everyone for joining us. We are very, very happy that our Minister of Social Development and with the responsibility for the N.I.S. took the time to be here with us. And likewise, our chairman, the chairman of the National Insurance Board, we indeed feel honored that you have decided to do so. And everyone who have taken time out this evening, we thank you. Now this evening, I'll be focusing on the N.I.S. and more specifically, the sustainability of the N.I.S. And all of us should be concerned whether or not the N.I.S. remains sustainable, not just for ourselves right now, but we always have to think about what legacy are we leaving for the next generation. So we would look at parametric changes, we would look at the 11th Actuarial Review, we would also look at what's happening in the region. It's always good to look outside of home to see, well, what's happening elsewhere, to benchmark and so. We would also look at some concerns with liquidity. We would look at the 13th Actuarial Review, the reform measures that are absolutely necessary for our sustainability, and then we are going to wrap up. So we see this picture here, and I know when we look at it, that's not a look that any of us want to identify with. This just looked like, Lord, that's not really what I planned. You ever reach in a situation where that's not what you planned? Well, that is exactly what all of us and our children would look like if we decide to continue to go forward and do nothing about the N.I.S. Make no changes, keep everything as is. And we don't want that picture. So let me move quickly to what really needs to be done, what's happening. Now, every 3 years, the National Insurance Board is required to do an actuarial review. And over the years, the actuarial reviews, they have been done, and the actuaries would make the recommendations and present the report to the government of the day. And as you see here, since 2002, the actuary has been making changes, and so far, we have really cherry-picked what we want to do, and all of the changes that would really ensure the sustainability and the longevity of the N.I.S. have been made. So let's start from the beginning. The 7th Actuarial Review, which was conducted in 2002, made 2 significant changes, recommendations rather. One, to gradually increase the retirement age from 60 to 65 over a period of 15 years. And one of the things that's important to highlight is the period of time that actually at that point in 2002 suggested that that change take place. Because we all could identify that when things change in small increments, it is easier to handle it, it is easier to digest it, and especially when it comes to our finances, it is easier to manage it. Right? So in 2002, the actuary said in the report that, look, Grenada, if you want your Social Security fund to last for a very long time, you need to do that. And while the actuary made that recommendation to us, Barbados and St. Lucia was already increasing their age. Because one of the things that we have to realize that all of the countries in the region, and in fact, a lot of the countries in the world for that matter, have a similar fund designed just as we have in Grenada. So we have a defined benefit fund. Well, of course, we don't have enough time today to go into what a defined benefit fund is, but we have a defined benefit fund similar to Barbados, St. Lucia, and all of CARICOM, all the islands in the region. And in that time, when our actuary was telling us, listen, you need to make the increase, Barbados was increasing already. St. Lucia in 2015 started their increase, right? We did nothing. In the 8th review in 2006, similar recommendation, gradually increase the retirement age. But you'd realize that the time frame that the actuary recommended actually decreased. So it went now from 15 years to between 9 to 12 years. Over a 9 to 12 year period, gradually increase your pension age from 60 to 65. But of course, again, nothing was done. Because one of the things I often hear when I go out to do presentations, persons would say, well, I'm sure there's something else y'all could do other than increasing the age. And so far, I haven't heard anything. And so far, if you have looked in the region, all of those other things, none of the other countries knows about it either. So maybe, I know maybe we have a magic formula that might just pop up, and I know the minister said make suggestions. So maybe we might get a suggestion today that we could put on the table to ensure our sustainability. Going to the 9th review, same recommendation again, gradually increase the pensionable age. And at that point, there was another recommendation to increase the contribution rate by 2% in 2015. Now, none of those were done either. We go to the 11th review and we realize that the recommendation is there again to gradually increase the pensionable age and to increase the contribution rate in 2018. Of course, nothing was done, and you'd realize by the time we got to the 12th review in 2018, there was another, of course, gradually increase the pensionable age and increase the contribution rate by 2.6%. So far, after all these recommendations, only one was implemented, and it wasn't a 2.6%, it was a 2% increase in the contribution rate. But we haven't done anything to ensure our sustainability, but there are a few things that we actually did. Some of the things that we did was to increase pension. And when the actuarial reviews are done, other than making recommendations for sustainability, there have been recommendations like these that says, listen, you need to pay a little more here, you need to introduce this new benefit there, etc. And we have really, unfortunately, cherry-picked too much and have only implemented the recommendations that we think, well, and I know the minister made reference to, listen, this is not good politically, but it's good for Grenada. And I hope that going forward, that's something, that's a mantra that would continue. Because in 1994, we increased pension between 5 to 35% depending on when the person started to get the pension. In 1997 also, there was another increase in pension. And we know that, of course, inflation, would affect the real value. So we need to increase pension. So we know that. But we have decided, okay, we're going to only do the ones that seem to be popular with persons. In 2006 also, we increased pension between 2% and 16%, again, depending on when the person started to receive the pension. And over the years, starting in 1995, 1995, we gradually increased the insurable earnings ceiling. That is the maximum salary on which N.I.S. is paid. But of course, an increase in the ceiling is really a benefit to those who contribute, not to the N.I.S. Because once you pay on a higher ceiling, it means you would collect much larger benefits. So you realize throughout all of this, N.I.S. Grenada and Grenada as a whole have done absolutely nothing to ensure that our lone Social Security institution is protected. And there are some key findings from the 11th actuarial review that I want all of us to pay attention to. Coming out of the 11th review, the actuary made recommendations and also made some statements that I really wish that we had woken up then and there and paid attention and implemented it. The actuary said in his report, starting 2016, annual contributions will be insufficient to meet total expenditure. So the total expenditure of the NIS will be benefits plus administrative expenses. So the actuary is saying whatever you collect, you would not be able to meet that. So it means you have to use your returns on investment to cover the shortfall. Is investment income was used, of course, will be necessary to cover the shortfall, and your reserves would continue to grow. Yeah, we could think about our reserves as the money in the bank. You know, you earn $1,500, you spend $1,000 and you put the $500 in the bank, right? So your reserves would continue to grow, but if you're not adding to it, obviously it would be growing at a slower pace because you're adding less. And starting in 2022, and that's the red flag, total income, meaning contribution income plus investment income, would not be able to cover expenditure, and of course your reserves would start to decrease. And during the year 2035, the reserves would drop to zero. Because if every month you're dipping into your reserves to cover expenses, would the reserves last forever? Absolutely not. So sometimes when we look at the NIS financial statements, we like to say, wow, the NIS has a lot of money. But once you start dipping into those reserves, it would not last forever. And once the reserves drop to zero, the NIS has no choice but to increase the contribution rate to 22.5%. So there need to be no consultation to find out, well, how you feel about it, just to cover expenditure. It automatically has to move to 22.5%. And remember, that was the 11th actuarial review. Now, this graph here is very, very interesting. And I know any of us just looking at it downwards, immediately it tells us something going wrong, right? Because it starts up there with a number that says 25.2 and now it's going down and this number says 8, right? So obviously something not going right. Now this graph is a graph of our reserve expenditure ratio, and all it's simply saying, let's suppose today the NIS decides to collect no new monies. So we keep in what we have, we keep in the pensioners that we have, so we're not adding and we're not subtracting. So we keep in things, everything that we have at the moment, we keep in it. How long would we be able to survive? And in 1987, you'd realize we were able to survive for 25.2 years. But look at what has happened over the years. As at 2021, that number is down to 8 years. So some alarm bell has to start going off in our heads to make us realize that, listen to me, we really need to do something if we want to protect the NIS. And this is a snapshot of our benefits that we paid in 2021. In 2021, at the top here, you'd realize just our age pension alone, we paid out $86.5 million just in age pension. And if you look at contribution income in that period, it was $96 million. So not even thinking about all these other benefits here, we paid 3.7 in invalidity, 5 million in survivors, 10 million in sickness, just age pension. So we even, if we just look at the age pension and we look at the contributions we collected, we realize that just age pension alone was $10 million below what we collected. So if we just add sickness to it, we realize already everything that we collected was just used up in those 2 benefits alone. So that too has to send out the warning bell in our minds and say, well, no, we need to do something. We need to make change. We know change is difficult, but anytime we decide to do it when it's supposed to happen, it's always easier to manage, it's always easier to swallow. And this is also very, very interesting picture of what we need to pay attention to. Now, as I stated before, there are 2 types of expenditure at the NIS. So there is the benefit expenditure, that's what we pay out, and of course, there are administrative expenses. And the national insurance laws has a benchmark for us of 12% that we are to ensure that administrative expenses do not cross that amount. So whatever you do in the year, whatever expenses you incur, you are not to cross 12%. And we are happy to say that, so this is the benchmark here, we are happy to say that this line here is where we actually have been performing. And although the law says, listen, 12%, we have set our own internal benchmark of 6%. Yeah, you know, sometimes you have a benchmark, but you have to decide to exceed it. So yes, we've cut it in half and we're like, listen, we don't want to go under 6%. And you'd realize that over the years, 2012, we were around 6, and since then, although everything else is going up, because all of us know electricity going up, this going up, everything going up, but look at what has happened with the NIS administrative expenses. In fact, in 2021, you'd realize that it was 4%, right? So we can't say, well, NIS not managing the fund properly, NIS mismanaging this. We know it is not mismanagement of funds. So if the fund has been prudently managed, it's been properly managed, we're making sure we're lean and mean when it comes to administrative expenses, we have to realize the bulk of the expenditure from the NIS comes from benefits, more so our pensions. Because if you look at these columns here, this represents our expenditure, and the blue part of the column represents the pensions. And we have to realize that pensions are expensive. Hence the reason most employers, most workplaces do not have an employer-funded pension. It is expensive. Hence the reason a lot of governments try to avoid paying a pension, because it is fundamentally very expensive. So the short-term benefits, and then we have administrative expenses that are kept very low. So we know the NIS is being managed properly, but we know we can't get away from fulfilling our mandate, and we are here to pay benefits. That's really and truly our mandate. Now, it's also important to realize that it's not just here at home in Grenada we have to make changes. Sometimes we feel, well, Grenada would just want to do this. What's happening around the region? So let's look at what's happening. In Dominica, we have the same type of social security fund, the defined benefit fund. You'd realize currently the retirement age in Dominica is 65. And sometimes I know we like to heckle the Dominicans and say, well, they're the only country who have not upgraded, when we could boast that, you know, we have this, we have a mall, and we have that. Dominica, very close to nature, and we would talk about Dominica, but guess what? When it comes to the Social Security Fund, they did not decide to, don't bother with the actuary, then people don't know what's going on. You understand? We like to say that, and we hear it all the time. Them don't know what's going on in Grenada, we don't need to make no change. Dominica has made their change to their retirement age, and it's at 65. In addition to that, Dominica has also been gradually increasing their contribution rate. Now, because of factors of Persons living longer. So we have an aging population, persons living longer. Women are having less children, so we know childbirth is decreasing. Migration among younger persons, even decreased productivity. All those factors would affect your Social Security fund. And of course, increasing the pension age in a lot of cases, and in most cases, is not enough to take care of that sustainability issue. So all of the other islands had to do other things. So Dominica has also been increasing their contribution rate. So you'd realize in 2023, they're now at 13.75%, and every year they would gradually increase, they would continue to increase by 0.5%, of course, shared between the employer and the employee, until they get to 15.75% in 2031. Likewise, if we go across to Antigua, and anytime I go to Antigua, I now start to personally get palpitations, because I used to always hear our director talking about Antigua, and you're thinking, oh, maybe he exaggerating a bit, yeah? But I've had the pleasure of communicating with some of my colleagues from our sister scheme in Antigua, and my first interaction, we were in a training session and everybody had to do their country presentation. And when the guy from Antigua got up and he presented, people actually cried. Yeah? When he talked about how the governments of the days came, go, and just did nothing and abused the Social Security Fund, and where they are now, people actually cried. In fact, I was there earlier on this year, and a lady who, not working with N.I.S. Antigua now, we were communicating, and she said it took her 2 years to receive her maternity benefit. 2 years. I mean, the thing hurt me so bad. She's like, listen, she's like, Miss Douglas, my child had teeth when I got my maternity benefit. Seriously. And I mean, I felt real depressed about it. And I was thinking, you know, that is exactly where we are heading for if we don't realize that we need to make these changes. And I hope that if we look at Antigua, you'd realize that, yes, they've started to change, but they're still in hot water. So right now, the pensionable age is 64, but it took so long to change that you still have to wait 2 years to get your maternity benefit. Right now, we turn around our maternity benefit in less than a week, and we still get complaints sometimes. All you need to do it faster. So compare less than a week to 2 years. Yeah? And that is where N.I.S. Grenada and Grenada is heading if we decide to bury our heads in the sand and not make any of these sustainability changes. So Antigua had to do other things. They had to increase the contribution rate. So you'd realize that it would get to 16% in 2025. That's 2 years away. Antigua also had to increase the number of contributions required to get a pension. So right now we know in Grenada is 500. Antigua already is on the way to increasing. So they gradually went from 5. Well, it wasn't very gradual. They had to do it fast, right? They are now at 700 to minimum requirement to get a pension. And by 2025, also 2 years from now, it would be 750. And trust me, this is not all that they have to do. Because even with this, if you're taking 2 years just to pay maternity, not pensions, yeah? Because if I start to tell you about pension, persons would be coming in, well, persons know by now not to come in for the pension. Wait 6 months, a year from whenever your pension is due, when they have money. Because that is actually what's happening. When they get some money, they would call you. So don't even waste your time to go. Yeah? And this is where we would end up if we decide, well, that's what we want. St. Vincent, likewise, right? They're making changes, but they didn't do like Antigua. They didn't wait until things got red and was going up in flames to start to see what they could salvage, right? So they're currently at 63. Well, from 2022, because remember it's gradual, so this year they're still at 63, and in 2025 they will be at 64. The minimum amount required to get a pension is also increasing in St. Vincent. So it's now, from 2022, it was $650. So this year is $650 also. Next year it will be $650. But by 2025, it would be $700. And it would continue to increase until 2028, where it will be $750. So the minimum amount to get a pension will be $750. The contribution rate also is increasing. And we can go on and we could look at Barbados and realize in Barbados, the retirement age, since we got our first recommendation to increase, was already at 67. And the contribution rates, if you look carefully, you would realize just for NIS, so think about the NIS benefits we receive right now. Just for NIS, they contribute 18.25%. And when you add the unemployment, as we have added recently, we've added the unemployment benefit and severance benefit, National Insurance Scheme Barbados, you contribute, so at the end of the month, your total contribution is 20.25%. And I would just let that sink in. 20.25% is the current contribution rate in Barbados, currently. And it has been like that for a number of years. And guess what? Because of the same sustainability issue, Barbados is looking to make changes. So very soon, the pensionable age will move from 67. It will not stay there. And in fact, at the highest level in Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley has been making a clarion call. So she's not leaving it up to just NIS to say, well, listen, we need to make changes. The Prime Minister has come out on many platforms and said that, listen to me, we need to fix our NIS. We need to make changes. Yes, it's at 67 and the contribution rate is at 20 point, can't remember the figure right now, but we need to make changes. And it's very important to put the contribution that Social Security makes to especially developing nations as ours. And this gives you a snapshot of the total assets of the different funds and the percentage of the GDP that it represents. So if you look at Anguilla, you would realize 36% of the assets represents 36% of the GDP, and that is very significant. Yeah, look at Dominica, 26, Grenada, 29, St. Kitts, 59, St. Lucia, 38. So we should know, and if we don't know, if you have 29% of your Social Security assets represented in your GDP, if that goes to zero, what happens to your country? Everything is affected. And that's one of the pictures we need to paint. So we need to stop looking at NIS in this little box and understand the significant impact that the NIS has on our nation and all of us. Because when the NIS pays out $115 million in 1 year in benefits, that's $115 million in Grenadians' pocket. So if we decide to take that $115 million out of circulation, tell me what would happen. And it's a harsh reality we need to come to. And just a little picture before I wrap up. I'll wrap up soon. Just a little picture I want us to look at here. And it shows our Social Security systems in the region and the condition of our reserves. Because all of us, as I said, are facing sustainability issues. Let's start with Antigua. Now, in 2009, the actuary in Antigua said, well, not in 2009, but the actuary in Antigua stated that expenditure will exceed contribution income in 2009. So in their actuarial review, the actuaries would have been saying, listen guys, you all need to make changes to Antigua national insurance scheme, else in 2009, yeah, your expenditure will be more than what you collect in. So you would start to become unsustainable. Of course, we know Antigua did nothing. Yeah? And also, in 2000, in fact, the next year, wow, the next year, your expenditure would exceed contribution income plus investment income. So your total income by the next year would not be able to cover your expenses. So of course, your reserve would drop to zero. And in 2010, it would just go to zero. Antigua did nothing, hence the reason they are where they are now. Let me give you a flip side picture, because it's always good to benchmark to see, well, who's doing what they're supposed to do. Let's look at St. Lucia. Now, St. Lucia's actuary stated that in 2025, that the expenditure will exceed contribution income. And guess what St. Lucia did? They were like, listen, 2015, we're making those changes. We go into 65. So hence the reason, in Grenada, but during COVID, when we really struggled and tried to see how we could assist persons who were unemployed and were only able to pay $330 a month, yeah, so we paid just over $5 million. When we were struggling to do that, St. Lucia paid out $80 million to St. Lucian in this unfunded benefit. So similar to us, it was an unfunded benefit they were paying. Yeah? But guess what? They were stronger. They made their changes when they had to make it. So obviously, they were in a better position, a more sustainable position to say, hey, this is unfunded, but we have to take care of our people. That's what Social Security is there for. But look at what's happening in Grenada. So for N.I.S. Grenada, our actuary said that expenditure will exceed contribution income in 2016. Yeah? And guess what we did? Absolutely nothing. In fact, the year before, St. Lucia started to increase in 2015. But we did absolutely nothing. And look at what has happened as a result. So 2016, expenditure exceeds contribution income. 2022, expenditure exceed in total income. And in 2032, our reserves would go to zero. Look at this comparison with St. Lucia. Expenditure would only exceed contribution income in 2035. That time our reserves are at zero already, and our contribution rate is 20-something or 30-something, right? So that is the difference. And look at St. Lucia's longevity now. It took them up to 2050. So we see the vastly different picture when we make those changes in a timely manner. And I will just read this statement here, and it speaks to liquidity. In order to meet its monthly obligation, the National Insurance Board has been forced to break several of its investment instruments before the maturity date. The instruments that have been liquidated thus far are term deposits, as they are easily converted to cash and earn relatively low interest. So, Grenada, we have to realize that once you start dipping into the reserves, that you're in real hot water. So it's no longer a recommendation and gradually do this over a 15-year period. You need to act now. Because in 2021, we were not able to cover everything. So we had to cash in our term deposit. So we have to turn some of the investment that's supposed to bring in investment returns for us. So $14.3 million in term deposits were liquidated so that we could pay benefits. In 2022, same thing. 6 term deposits totaling $14.5 million had to be cashed in, had to be liquidated so they can pay benefits. And it's projected that $22 million in term deposits would have to be liquidated in 2023. I mean, seriously, is that the road we want to continue down? Is that the legacy we want to leave for our children? Or would we do the right thing and act right now? Because one of the things that we need to realize is that Social Security needs to be equitable. So we're contributing 12% now, but if we do nothing now, our children would definitely not be contributing 12%. It would be far in excess of that amount. So we need to do a few things, not just increase the pensionable age. We need to, of course, increase the age. We need to increase the contribution rates. We need to also increase, similar to what we saw in St. Vincent, etc., increase the number of contributions and so required to get a pension. But above all, we need to change, we need to act now. So the 13th actuarial review, just before I get to the changes in detail, stated this: total expenditure, similar to what the 11th review and all the other reviews said, total expenditure will exceed total income in all years. Yeah? And one thing I forgot to mention with the 11th review, just as the actuaries stated in the report, it happened. It happened, just in case. I forgot to mention that. It happened. So we're operating right now where we paying out more than we collecting and we have to dip into the reserves. I want you to remember it happened. So there is no reason for us to doubt whether or not this would happen. It will happen if we make no change. So total expenditure will exceed total income in all the years, right? The fund will be depleted between 2033 and 2035. That's very soon. And the contribution rate will be between 24 to 26%, even higher than Barbados. So if we thought 20% in Barbados was high, we would be paying between 24 and 26% just to get a benefit. So there will no longer be a need for Miss St. Bernard to come to work because there will be nothing to invest. Yeah, no reserves, nothing to invest. We'll just be living hand to mouth, just as they do in Antigua. You'd have to wait your 2 years to get your maternity benefit. They would have to call you to let you know when you get in a pension, right? We would have to do all of that if we decide to do absolutely nothing. So at the end of this, I'm sure all of us are reminded that we need to make change. And what do we need to do? We need to gradually increase the pensionable age. And we want you to wait to take your pension. But of course, we do leave the option. If you decide, listen, for some reason I can't make it, I want my pension at 60, you would have the option to take it at 60, but of course, at a reduced rate. But we want you to defer taking your pension to age 65 or a later age to ensure that the National Insurance Scheme is around for your children and your children's children to come. So in 2024, the pensionable age will increase from 60 to 61. If you decide at that point that I want my pension, of course, there will be a reduction in your rate of 5%. Likewise, in 2025, it will be 62. If you decide you're taking it at 61, your reduction will be 5%. At 62, it would be 10%. And it continues until the year 2028, where it would be 65. So that's what our increase in our pensionable age looks like. Of course, that's not all we need to do if we are to remain sustainable. We also need to gradually increase the contribution rate. And I know we had that increase this year, but of course that was for the introduction of our new benefit, the unemployment benefit, and Ms. St. Bernard would talk about it. But we need to increase, so every year, gradually, the actuary has recommended a 0.5% increase shared between the employer and the employee. So in 2024, the rate would move to 12.5%. Okay, needs to change, all right? But the rate would increase by 0.5%. So employees would pay 0.25%. Currently is 12%. Employees pay 5.5. So you would pay 5.75, and employers would pay 6.75. And the next year you would pay 6%. Employers would pay 7%. So that's how it would increase. In addition to that, the actuary has recommended that we adjust the pension formula, because right now it's kind of top heavy. 30% is paid for your first 10 years and 1% thereafter. So the actuary is saying, listen, when you're a young Social Security fund, you need to do that to ensure that persons can qualify, but as you reach maturity, you need to adjust. Because of course, most persons, if not everybody, has an opportunity now to qualify. So you need to adjust. So it's recommended that we adjust so that you get 25% upfront for the first 10 years and 1% thereafter. Of course, the number of contributions to get a pension also needs to be adjusted to ensure sustainability. So we want to gradually move from 500 this year to eventually 750 in 2028. And this, you may not see it clearly, depending on how far you're sitting, but I'll simply explain what's happening here. Now, if all the changes, the increase in the age, the increase in the contribution rate, the adjustment to the pension formula, if everything is not done, it would not take us very far. So this scenario simply shows you where, if you only do one, how far it would take you in terms of how many sustainable years you would have. If you do 2, if you do 3, where it would take you. And most of them only taking you up to about 2030. But in order to really get somewhere, we need to make all the changes. Not just cherry pick and say, well, okay, this one here, but not this one there. If we really want to make an impact, if we are really serious about saving N.I.S. Grenada, we have to make all the changes, and then that would take us around 50, 54, 55 years, thereabouts. So in my wrap-up, the ECCB made this statement. So this is not an N.I.S. statement now. The governor of the ECCB made this statement. Social security systems are in need of reform, and failure to implement these reforms can result in financial instability of the social security system and instability of the ECCU financial sector. So when Grenada doesn't do what it has to do, it not just affects Grenada, all of us in the region, and we like to be happy that our EC dollar is strong, yeah? It would affect the strength of all of us in the region. So I hope after all of this, we would decide, okay, let's pick up the can, let's fix up all the dents, let's put a top on it, let's cap this hemorrhaging of the N.I.S. and make the changes. No more kicking, no can not going down no road, making all this unnecessary noise. Yeah? Noise pollution is a no-no in Grenada right now. No more noise pollution. We're picking it up right now, and we are making the change. It is difficult. Yes, I'm not saying it will be easy, but in order for us to have a sustainable pension and for our children, we have to make those changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas, for that very informative presentation. I think the director is about to lose his job. If you just give us a few minutes while the Deputy Director, Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard, gets mic'd up for the second presentation, which will be on the unemployment benefit and the new self-employed regulations. Deputy Director of the N.I.S, Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Philip Telesford, Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. Ms. Denise Roberts, Principal of the Grenville Secondary School. Mr. Dorset Cromwell, Director of the N.I.S. Mr. Philbert Lewis, Chairman of the National Insurance Board, other members of management, our special invited guests, welcome all. So this afternoon, Lisa would have taken you through the heavier part of the afternoon. We are now going to go into the much lighter part of the afternoon, and I have the privilege of presenting to you two of the most exciting changes that are taking place at the N.I.S. today. So we are going to start off by looking at the unemployment benefit. We will look at who will be covered, what the qualifying conditions are, the benefit amount, how do you qualify, the eligibility requirements, how does someone get disqualified from receiving the benefits, the other parameters, and then we will move on to the self-employed and the whole new revamped approach that we would want to present to you today. So first of all, we'll start off by looking at the definition of unemployment. So to be considered unemployed, a person must have lost their job through no fault of their own and is available for work but cannot find a job. So for example, if I decide that, boy, Mr. Cromwell giving me real pressure, I can't take it anymore, I'm going to leave the job, I would not qualify for unemployment because I chose on my own to leave. So you must have been dismissed or lost your job due to no fault of your own to qualify for unemployment benefits under the national insurance. So who will be covered? We are going to be covering private sector workers, statutory bodies like the N.I.S, Government of Grenada established and unestablished workers, work permit holders, and self-employed persons. And in the case of self-employed persons, the national insurance scheme in Grenada has taken the bold step once more, because we have done it once before, when we introduced the the employment injury benefit, where we offer the coverage to self-employed persons. At the time, persons were like, self-employed persons are going to abuse the system. How is it you all could dare cover these persons for employment injury? And from our experience, we have seen that that is not the case. Self-employed persons in Grenada are very responsible, and they have not abused the employment injury benefit, and we do not expect them to abuse the unemployment benefit as well. So what are the qualifying conditions for this benefit? You must have worked at least 1 year or 52 contributions in your working life. So you cannot just get a job today, I work for 1 month, I'm unemployed and qualified. You must first have worked for a full year to qualify for the benefit. But in addition to that, you must also have paid 8 contributions in the last 13 weeks prior to you becoming unemployed. Plus, you must have paid 13 contributions in the last 26 weeks prior to becoming unemployed. So you must satisfy those 3 conditions to qualify for unemployment benefits. And then the unemployment benefit would be payable from the first day once unemployment lasts for at least 1 week. So you must be unemployed for a full week to qualify for the benefit. So what's the benefit amount? The benefit replaces 50% of your insurable income for a maximum period of 13 weeks. And of course, you know that the National Insurance Scheme, we have a ceiling on which you pay. So let's say, for example, I'm working for $6,000. I become unemployed. No, you will not get 50% replaced of the 6,000, but 50% replaced of the 5,000, which is a ceiling on which you make contributions on. What are the eligibility requirements? So you must be in insurable employment. So you must be working. I cannot be on the block and apply for unemployment benefit. No, you wouldn't qualify. You must have been in a job and under the pensionable age. So if you're over the pensionable age, whatever it is at the time, right now it's at 60, it's going to 65, you have to be under that age to be eligible for unemployment benefit. If the maximum duration of 13 weeks is exhausted, so for example, you get paid your 13 weeks, you become unemployed in any 1 year, you get paid your full 13 weeks in that year, you cannot qualify until you go back to work and work for another 52 weeks, right? So persons believe that this benefit can be exploited. It can't be, because the requirements that were put in place ensures that persons take this thing seriously to prevent any abuse. You must be ready, willing, and capable of working each day. So you cannot be sitting at home watching television all day and continue to receive the benefits, right? So what is going to be put in place to avoid persons doing that? We are going to establish a job matching service, right? And what the job matching service is going to do is going to ensure that if Mr. Cromwell becomes unemployed, then he has to report to this job matching service, who would help to match him to an available job. So he cannot sit on his phone all day, texting, WhatsApping, and not go out and actively seek a job and continue to receive unemployment benefits. So you cannot also refuse suitable employment. So if I'm unemployed and I get offered a job and I decide, you know what, N.I.S. is paying me 50%, I can live off of that for a while, I'm not going to bother with the job. No, you would not be eligible. You must also have completed all assigned training, and the job matching service will identify whatever training you need based on the type of job that you do. In some cases, persons may have to be retooled, so I may not be able to get a job in this field, but I'm capable of being taught another field, something else, and the job matching service will do that for me. And if I'm assigned training, I'm expected to complete it. If I don't, I would not be eligible. I must be residing in Grenada, so I cannot lose my job and decide, you know what, I'm going to go chill in the US for a while and collect unemployment from the N.I.S. for the 13 weeks that they're going to pay me. No, you have to be residing in Grenada because you have to be actively seeking employment. The individual or the unemployed person would have to report every 2 weeks to confirm that they're still unemployed. So the unemployment benefit is paid in 2-week tranches. I pay you the first 2 weeks. At the end of that period, you are expected to report to the N.I.S. that you are still unemployed, you're actively seeking employment for the benefit or the payment to continue. If you don't report, the payment will not continue. Employers are required to complete and submit a termination certificate. So whenever a person becomes unemployed or they are terminated from their employment, the employer now has to submit a certificate to the N.I.S. informing that this person was terminated, when they were terminated, and whatever relevant information that we require of the employer would have to be provided. So how can a person be disqualified from receiving the benefits? If you, as I said before, if you voluntarily left the job, it must be due to no fault of yours. You should have no choice in losing your job. If a person is confined to jail, the penitentiary, hospital, or other similar institution, you would also be disqualified. And the thinking is, if you are in any one of those institutions, you cannot be actively seeking employment If a job is offered to you, you cannot take it. So you would become disqualified from receiving the benefits. If an individual is dismissed for misconduct, and we have seen a few of those cases already coming in where persons are dismissed for misconduct. I would have theft, I stole from, I committed fraud. If you commit any one of those offenses that is deemed misconduct, you would be disqualified from receiving the benefits. If an individual fails, as I said before, you were offered a job and you don't take it up, you could be disqualified. And if you fail to attend training courses, you would be disqualified. Some of the other key parameters, a contribution rate of 1%, shared equally between the employee and the employer. So 0.5% for the employer, 0.5% for the employee, and that started in May of 2023. Payment of unemployment shall commence 3 months from the payment of contribution. So I think we started the contribution in February, and payment started in May. Time for claiming the benefit, of course, with every benefit type, there's a period in which you have to claim. So in this case, it will be 15 days from the date of becoming unemployed. Where layoff is permanent, so somebody gets permanently laid off and the employer would have paid them vacation pay, pay in lieu of notice, or severance, then that would be factored in and it would determine when your unemployment benefit will start. So for example, if I lose my job, I get permanently laid off, my employer pays me 3 months vacation pay, then my unemployment is going to start 3 months from the date I become unemployed because I would have received vacation pay for 3 months. So if I continue to be unemployed after the 3 months, then my unemployment benefit payment will kick in. And as I said before, employers are required to complete the termination certificate, and that must be submitted within 7 days of termination. So, current status, we would have implemented this benefit in 1st of May, and claims are currently been submitted and paid. So to date, we would have received 63 claims from persons. Unfortunately, the vast majority of those are persons who became unemployed prior to implementation of the new benefits. So those were disqualified, but we would have paid in the region of about 20 claims, and we probably have about 11 being currently processed. So we're moving on now to the self-employed. So let me just give you a little background on the existing self-employed program that we have. The current program requires that a self-employed person pays on a monthly basis by the 14th of the month, each month, their monthly contributions. So regardless of whether I'm a fisherman, I work in the tourism sector, I'm expected to behave like a normal employer. So let's say, for example, I have a supermarket. That's a normal employer. I have a supermarket. I'm selling goods every day, every month. I'm generating X amount. I pay my employees, blah, blah, blah. I'm expected to pay by the 14th. A self-employed person has to fit into that same framework. Whether you make X amount in a month, you make $0 in that month, you are expected to come forward and pay your contributions on a monthly basis. And if you do not pay, then you are charged surcharge and interest on the monies. Is that fair? Is it? No. Right. And given the nature of some self-employed persons where the income may not be earned on a consistent basis, people are not willing to participate. So if I know as a self-employed person, I'm making my money during the first 6 months in the year, and the next 6 months, there's nothing coming in, I am not going to line up to pay N.I.S. I'm not, because in the next 6 months when I have no money to pay, N.I.S. is going to be telling me, yes, you have to pay the money, and on top of that, you have to pay surcharge, and you have to pay interest. So persons are not willing, or self-employed persons are not willing to participate in a program like that. It is so inflexible. Persons who are registered as employees and self-employed are not allowed to contribute at the same time. So for example, if I have a side gig where I generate the majority of my income when the month comes, so I could be working, but my side job, I'm generating more money for my side job than I'm generating in my employment. And if I want to pay N.I.S. on that side income to ensure that my pension at the end of the day is at a level that can sustain me, I cannot currently. I can only pay on the income from my employer, and I cannot pay on my self-employed income. So is that fair again? No, it's not. So having identified those shortcomings, we held some consultations with several groups of self-employed persons, and they had some suggestions that they gave to us. So some of the suggestions was to remove the requirement for specific timing of payments every month. Self-employed persons should be allowed to contribute when funds are available. And the National Insurance Board should rethink the concept of penalties for late payments. Allowance should be made for lump sum payments that can spread throughout the year. So what did the board do and what did the government do? They heard, they listened, and they responded. So we are now introducing or presenting you today with a new flex approach to self-employed coverage. What is going to change? Self-employed persons would no longer be required to contribute monthly on a set monthly amount. Penalties and interest would no longer apply. So we are making the program more flexible for self-employed persons. The flexibility now allows you to choose the amount that you want to pay up to a maximum of $7,180. And that limit is based on the existing rate that normal employed persons would pay on. Remember I told you there's a ceiling, so there's a maximum on which you can pay on. So the self-employed would also have that same maximum. Total contributions paid now will be converted to a number of weekly contributions and insurable earnings for the year, and that is what will be used to calculate your short-term benefits. Short-term benefits payments will be based on contributions paid the previous year. So whatever monies I paid this year, when next year comes, you are using what I paid this year to calculate my short-term benefits. And the minimum you have to pay to qualify for short-term benefits based on the current rate of 12% is $769. So you pay as little as $769 or you pay as high as $7,180. That is the flexibility that this is going to bring to you. And self-employed persons who are also employees would be allowed to contribute on both incomes, but of course up to the maximum. And the current status, this new approach was introduced in July of this year, so 3-4 days ago, 5 days ago. This new flexible approach was implemented, and we are really hoping that persons would take up this, self-employed persons in particular, would take on this and get ready and come into the NIS, register and start paying if you have not been already doing so, because what we have presented you with is a more flexible way of doing business with the NIS, so that now you can also qualify for a pension when you get to 60 and 65. Because presently there are a lot of self-employed persons who they pay, but how they pay at the end of the day when they get to 60 or the pensionable age, they just cannot qualify for a pension. So this approach now allows you or puts you in a better position to qualify for a pension when you get to 60. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director. We have now come to the end of the presentations, and I would like to invite you, our guests, to ask any questions that you may have on either of the presentations made today. And sorry, if you can use the microphone at the front, just so everyone can hear your question. Everyone might benefit from the question. Right here, Lisa.
All right, good evening. It's not really a question, but with the new flex approach to self-employ, she said that it started on July 1st. Am I correct? I wanted to get a screenshot of the points there, but I find it was a bit dull. So can I get it? Yeah, because I'm self-employed, that's why I'm here. And with the first presentation, I came in late, and we are looking at the changes with the age. 65 years, will it remain there when it reaches 65? You know, now it's 60. So, for example, if I'm 57 years, how much years do I have to wait to get benefit? If that how much years? 57, 3 more years, I will be 60 years. But at 60 years, will I be able to get my benefit? Or are you saying that I could get it, but you are asking me to wait?
So we're asking you to wait. Yeah, we want you to wait and defer it. I'll pull back up the table. We want you to wait. If you can't wait, 60 is the option, but at a reduced rate. Yeah, but we want you to defer your pension. We want you to wait and take it at a later age.
So from 57 to how much? 3
So let me pull back up the.
Okay, can I just get
Okay, so what we could do, anybody who wants the presentation, we have our registrars outside. You just give them your email address or your WhatsApp number, however you want to receive the presentation. This presentation is also on our website. So if right now you go to nisgrenada.org and you go to resources, you'll be able to see this presentation and the presentation that the deputy director did. But if you want it, we can email it to you, we could WhatsApp it to you. Those options are available. In addition to that, if you want specific information, personalized information in terms of how the increase in the age affects you, also you contact us and we could provide you with pension estimates, and we could walk through scenarios with you so you could decide now, you know, how this is going to affect you, and you'd realize that maybe, you know what, I need to defer taking my pension early. So that's available also. So our WhatsApp number, 403-7512. But once you go to Facebook, N.I.S. Grenada, you would get this, our website, nisgrenada.org. 403-7512.
Any other questions? All right. I would like to invite our HR manager just to give the vote of thanks.
So we have come to the end of our session this evening, and I know based on the presentation and our valuable question asked that we are all enlightened on the changes that will soon be implemented, or some have been implemented already, by the National Insurance Board. We could not have accomplished this evening's session without a few persons, very important persons, whom I would like to take the opportunity to thank. I would like to thank Minister Telesford for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here with us today and for his remarks. Ms. Curleen St. Bernard for her prayers, Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard and Mrs. Lisa Douglas for such riveting presentations, Mr. Max Gordon, our gracious moderator, Ms. Denise Roberts for allowing us to use the school to have this very important consultation, TNR Communications for our online viewership, and finally, I would like to thank you, our valuable stakeholders who joined us today in person and online. I trust that the information shared this evening has provided clarity on why it is very important for the changes that the National Insurance Board has made and for the future changes. So thank you again, and very safe journeys at home.
Thank you, Ms. James. As she said, we have come to the end of today's proceedings. But as Ms. Douglas would have mentioned, please see our representatives on the way out and register your email address so that we can send you any information that you would like. Thank you.